Hello guys, and welcome back to Joe's Ventures, and today we're going to be doing another episode of our Planet Zoo kind of DLC reviews. So having a look at the Wetland Animal Packs, which is a wonderful animal pack that is themed from animals all across the world living in wetland habitats. So yeah, I'm really excited to get stuck into this one. I thought this was a pretty interesting pack, because we're going to have a look through exhibit animal first. We're going to be starting off with the Danube Crested Newt, so let me just... Oh no, wrong one. It's the filter. We're going to go in here. See, look at that. Wonderful. Let's see if we can see our little guys here. There they are. So these are the Danube Crested Newt. Let's see if I can get it perfect. There we are. They look pretty good, don't they? Really cute little guys. So this is the Danube Crested Newt, or just the Danube Newt. These guys are a species of newt that is found in Eastern and Central Europe, along in the basin of the Danube River and the Danube Delta as well, so it's found in those kind of areas, some tributaries, things like that. Really interesting little species, and they get their name the crested newt because they have this really wacky like thing of skin on their back there that makes it look like they've got a big crest. So that's kind of where they get their name from. So these guys, the lasses are bigger than the lads. The lads typically get between 13 and 15 centimeters in total. And that's average female as well, about 5.1 to 5.9 inches in total. Sometimes females will get up to 7.1 inches, or about 18 centimeters. These are the smallest species of crested newt, and they have this really long, elongated body to help them with swimming as well, and they have these short limbs. And they actually have evolved to actually increase the number of the vertebrae with ribs on them. And they have 16 to 17 in this species, which is the highest among the newts, so that's a cool little fact. You can see also in terms of their colours, they're quite interesting. They've got back and sides, they have these dark spots with spotting as well. The belly, as you can see, is kind of orange to reddish, kind of striking colour with these blotches as well. And they also have like this stripe down the base of the tail there with a bluish white stripe going down there, typically for males, as it's a sign that they're going to breed. And yeah, it's pretty interesting that they have that. So that's kind of the male and female, the male hair, the female hair. Really interesting. So in terms of their lifestyle, these guys actually have the longest aquatic phase in their genus, and adults will actually move from their breeding sites from February to March, and they usually stay there about for 6 months, and occasionally they'll even stay longer and return to the water in autumn. And males will court females with a display of their ritualized body movements, and when they've gained that interest of the female, they guide it over to a spermatophore, which they deposit on the ground, and then the female takes that in her body through her cloaca, and their eggs are fertilized internally. As in with other newts, they can lay about 200 eggs per season, which are folded individually into leaves of aquatic plants, and eggs and larvae are smaller than other newt species, and they can take longer, or 2 to 4 months, until they reach their metamorphosis stage and leave the water. So that's pretty interesting. Both on water and on land, the newts are largely nocturnal, and in their habitats they typically hide under vegetation, and on land they'll hide under rocks and even small animal burrows for cover. Their diet is typically things like different invertebrates, so also tadpoles and smaller newts. Predators of these guys also include grass snakes, various carnivorous mammals, and herons and other birds like that, so they're pretty commonly preyed on. And in terms of their threat, they're considered near-threatened, because the main threat that they have is habitat destruction, especially since of like pollution, damming, and things like that as well, especially around the Danube and places like that. Also, another issue is hybridization with other crested newt species, which could dilute the gene pool, and a loss of breeding ponds because of the declining spring rain in their southern range, which is probably due to global warming. And they're seen as threats to these guys. Also, as I mentioned, hybridization, and so they are technically protected by law. So really cool little newts there. Really sort of little story. I'm a big fan of these little guys here. There's a male and female there. Let's see if we can get a slightly better view. We want to get as good a view as can. Look at these, male and female. Really beautiful. Anyway, I think this would be great to move on to. Here's a little better look. They're having a little discussion. Look at these cute little fellas. I'm a big fan. Anyway, we're going to be moving on to our next animal. We've got our first habitat animal. We're going to have a look at the Speckled Cayman. So another cool animal we got here. So this guy came out really wonderfully. So these guys... Oh, wait, no. I've got to have a look at the... See, I always do this every time. I've got to check the Zoopedia. What's the Zoopedia on these guys? So look. Yeah, pretty much mentioned what we said. There's the habitat, Danube around there, the Baltics. 1 to 6, dominance none. They're polygamous. As I mentioned, same sizes here. Age of maturity is about 2.5 years. They're sterile until they die. Mating events 1 to 3. Gestation incubating period 3. Interbirth period 9 months. And they're difficult to breed. And the smallest of the crested newts, when threatened, they'll have a defensive pose to expose their brightly undercoloured size, and they secrete toxins as well, so a lot of them are toxic. Like other newts, they are strictly carnivorous from the moment of hatching, as I mentioned, the water as well. And Danube crested newts already existed before the last glacial period, and like other crested newt species, they likely survived in small refugia and they spend in their current range again. So yeah, that's how like ice ages work. But anyway, we're going to move it on back to our Speckled Cayman. Really wonderful little guy here. I'm a big fan of how he's come out. So these guys are also known as the white cayman or the speckled cayman. These guys, as you can see, are like a brownish, greenish, yellowish color that they've got going on here with the speculate-like type ridge here. So it kind of looks like they've got like this glasses on, so they got spectacled. So really, really cute. Look at them asleep there. And that's where they get their common name. They typically grow from lengths between 1.4 to 2.5 meters, or 4'6" to 8 feet 2. And they typically weigh between 7 and 40 kilograms, or 15 to 88 pounds. And with males typically being longer and heavier than females. They also diet as very, very generalist, so they feed on crabs, fish, small mammals, and snails. And yeah, really cool guys. In terms of their, like, if you've seen the Rio Apiporus Cayman in the last couple episodes of Planet Zoom on Spotlights, you would see these guys were a subspecies of the Speckled Cayman. And it's really interesting, they're actually genetically very similar, but they look very different. So that's a really cool thing about these guys. As I mentioned, they can get, like, females typically grow from about 1 meter to 1.4 meters, or 3.5 to 4.6 feet, with males potentially getting up to 1.5 to 1.8 on average, with large males getting up to 2 meters, or 2.5 meters, or about 8 feet long. So that's kind of generalish there. In terms of their diet, as I mentioned, they vary a lot seasonally. So during the wet season, they pretty much feed on shrimp, crabs, and snails as well during the wet season, and they mostly eat fish during the dry season. Other animals they'll eat is like arachnids, birds, myropods, reptiles such as lizards, snakes, and turtles. They'll also eat gastroliths as well, so that helps them with digestion a bit as well. And they also just being very weird and wacky animals. And another really cool fun about these guys is that they're very vocal. They have up to 950 different vocalizations and visual displays to communicate to each other. And both adult and young produce call for group cohesion. And males are typically known to communicate by moving their tail to a central position and by using an arch and stuff like that. And juveniles will also vocalize, as you heard there, when they're in distress to try and get their mother to come. So let's have a look at these wonderful babies while we talk about their reproduction. That's the female. So look at these little babies. So cute. Very, very cute. These guys reach sexual maturity at about 7 years old, or 4 to 7 years old, at a length of about 1.2 meters. For females and 1.4 for males. Usually it's the more dominant individuals that mature more quickly, and they start to copulate during May to August in the wet season, where the female will build a nest out of vegetation, stuff like that, in areas close to the water but not at a risk of being flooded. And the eggs are typically laid in July to August, with the species very rarely nesting in the winter, with an average size of about clutch size of about 22 eggs, but it can range from 14 to 40. And larger females are known to make more eggs than smaller females. And like a lot of other animals, these have temperature-dependent sex determination. So the different temperatures will kind of produce, so like higher temperatures will become female, lower ones become male, things like that. And they typically hatch after 90 days, with 20 to 25% of the eggs being successful. And when they're born, they get a length of about 20 to 23 centimeters, or 7 to 9 inches, and they hang out in creches until they're old enough to kind of do their own thing. They take care of the young until about 12 to 18 months old, and the young are obviously good prey for animals such as hawks and herons and other animals, which mostly die in their first year of life. But the juveniles are preyed upon also by caiman, stuff like that. But once often protected by their parents, so that's also good. Let's see if we can spot our little baby swimming. There's got to be a swimming baby somewhere. Look at these cute little guys. How cute. In terms of their habitat, they have the largest range of any caiman or New World crocodilian. They're found pretty much in places such as Brazil, Colombia, Venezuela, Cuba, and even found in Florida. They've been introduced, I believe. And they're sometimes mislabeled as American alligators, but there's believed to be an isolated population of invasive speckled caimans in Florida, which is very not good. But typically they live all around kind of the Amazon area or central of South America. And they typically live in forests, where they live in inland bodies of water. This is grass and savanna as well. They generally prefer calm water with large habitats of floating vegetation, things like that as well. And the adult population is estimated to be about 1 million and stable. And about 4 million speckled caimans are found in Venezuela. And the surveys show that they're actually increasing, so they're doing quite well. However, some populations, such as Peru, they're not doing so well. So it's very possible that some places are doing better than others. The population is, as mentioned, estimated to be in the millions. Because a lot of other crocodiles, these guys have been hunted for their skins, and that means they have been extirpated from a lot of areas where they used to live. Especially like other species as well, they've been computed. So like, it's believed to be the main reason that the Cuban crocodile was extirpated from Cuba and a lot of places. And they have a diet similar to the black caiman, which is both eats more insects and juveniles and may actually compete with each other. But luckily there's been a lot of conservation programs to help bring the numbers up, so they're considered doing quite well. So yeah, really, really cool guys here. So that's a great idea of some good conservation work. So yeah, considered least concern. So these guys live Central South America, all that we mentioned, the species of least concern. Although they may be hunted for their skin, the global population is not affected by this. And you can see they have quite a huge range from like Central America down into South America. Quite a big range. Group size up to 1 to 6, so it's pretty much the same as the American alligator. They're polygamous, confident with humans, and shouldn't enter their habitat. 2 meters long for male, 1.4 for females. 50 years is good, and about 16 kilos. So the ranges I put in there was like 7 to 40, so that's probably a better average. So age of sexual maturity is about 6 years. They have sex till they die. Often the number of offspring in breeding event is 3 to 8, so they produce a lot of babies. The incubation period is about a month, and the interbirth period is about 24 months, and the average reproduce in captivity. So they actually been known to hibernate in the mud as well. A lot of crocodilians do this. The eyes of these caiman reflect red in low light. That's also true. That's the tacit lucidum, which is a membrane that kind of reflects light. When crocodile numbers were declining in South America, speckled caimans were hunted for their skin and leather products, although the skin was very bony and less desirable for commercial use. Speckled caimans mainly fed on fish, crustaceans, and mollusks, or they consume plant matters as well. And also, speckled caimans have few predators due to their size and role in the ecosystem. Humans, jaguars, and other adult caiman are usually the only predators capable of killing an adult speckled caiman. So yeah, that's pretty cool. Predators, and they don't like competing with anyone else. Really, really wonderful here. So got to see some wonderful guys here. Love these speckled caiman. Next, we're going to move on to another animal. We have got the Nile Lechwe. Very, very interesting guy here. So I'll have a look at that wonderful male here. So these guys are also known as the Mr. Gray's Lechwe, or Mrs. Gray. They're an endangered species of antelope that's found around Sudan and Ethiopia. So males, as you can see here, are on average about 165 centimeters or 55 inches long, and I think that's actually the wrong way, 165 centimeters, and 100 to 105 or 39 to 41 centimeters tall at the shoulder. With females being average, a little smaller, about 135 centimeters or 3 inches, and 85 inches centimeters or 31 to 33 inches tall. And they weigh between 60 to 90 kilograms, 130 to 20 pounds. And they live on average about 10 to 11 years, but most commonly up to uncommonly 19 years. And you can see here they've got quite a shaggy coat. The male has this really charismatic pattern of like white spots down the tail and also down the neck and head. And it's really, really interesting. And they've got these very large horns that can get up to about 50 to 87 centimeters or 20 to 34 inches with these long ridges as well. Really, really interesting looking guy here. Big fan. Have a look at the females while we talk about their ecology. So these guys use visual and vocalize to communicate with each other, and they even can rear high up in the air to for their opponents and turn their heads side to side with displaying, with females making loud sounds and things like that. And when fighting, the males will also duck their heads and use their horns to pitch against each other. And the larger male, if he prevails, or the more strong male, obviously gets the access to the females and rutting and things like that. These guys are quite a common prey item for animals such as lions, Nile crocodiles, hunting dogs, and leopards. Can't speak today. And they will flee into the water if they feel disturbed, but females will often defend the ice spring from smaller prey by kicking and things like that. And yeah, really just interesting. They like to run into the water, so they're not probably that's their defense mechanism. So in terms of their diet, they feed on succulent plants and water greens. They eat a lot of things like wild rice, is thought to be preferred during the flood season. And they have a special ability to wade in shallow waters and swim in deeper waters. And they actually may feed on young leaves of trees and bushes as well. And they actually rear up to get these young plants and things like that. And they're also found in marshy areas, as we mentioned, the wetland pack, and that's where they get a lot of their other plants, aquatic plants as well. So in terms of reproduction, they reach sexually mature at about 2 years old, with mating occurring throughout the year, but peaks between February and May, with during the mating season, young males will bend their horns to the ground and poke the earth, with males fighting for the water and fighting the water and things like that with dominance, and the successful male gets to copulate with the females. And the gestation period for these guys is about 7 to 9 months on average, with a single calf being born. These little infants are born at about 4.5 to 5.5 kilograms, or 9 to 12 pounds, with females experience estrus a month after that baby's born. And after its birth, it's kept hidden in the thick vegetation for about 2 to 3 weeks, and when the mother nurses it, it's weaned at like 5 to 6 months. And a few months later, they're ready to be independent and join the herd, which is pretty cool. So as I mentioned, their habitat, they're typically found in shallow waters, bordering deeper swamps, where the water is about 10 to 40 centimeters deep. And Nile Lechwe are endemic to Sudan and Ethiopia, and they're found in the Nile, so that's where they get the name Nile Lechwe. And most of them, they live in the sud swamps and things like that, in smaller numbers in the Gambela National Park, places like that. And they've been severely affected by civil wars, and this is part of the reason why they're endangered, is due to human settlements and habitat degradation, civil wars, which have caused human displacement, things like that, and is obviously restricted by larger movements of people. So this is why they are considered endangered. The global population is estimated to be between 30,000 and 40,000 individuals, being concentrated in Sudan, but the reason they're considered endangered is because it's very politically unrest there, and so if they one day they just decided if civil war went out, these deer would probably be the first, or not deer, antelope would probably be the first target of people, especially for poaching and even bushmeat as well. So that's a bit of an issue as well. But there have been some in zoos and areas like that, and game parks in South Sudan. And it seems shows that they need some really good conservation projects, but they seem to be doing it right now, so as long as nothing too bad happens. And look at you, wonderful. You're very, very cute. And I think I need to just make sure that the right settings are on before... I'll just go creative. Fly. Let's just save faced. And then we're going to have a look at the Zoopedia. So we've got the Nile Lechwe. As I mentioned, they're endangered. The wild population is estimated about 4,300. The estimate of 30,000 to 40,000 was about 1983, but it was declined to 95% because of civil wars and things like that. So yeah, it's kind of gone down, which is very, very bad. Nice little pictures here. We've also got the small range, because obviously, as I mentioned, they went from like 30,000, 40,000 to 4,000, so it's not good. They can live up to groups of 3 to 50, with 1 male up to 49 females. Bachelor groups 3 to 10, females 3 to 50. The dominance is territorial bulls acquire a harem of females. They're polygamous, shy, and guests get into the habitat. And males are quite a bit bigger, 102 at the shoulders, 82 centimeters at the shoulder. Life expectancy is about 13 years, 105 kilograms, 75 kilograms. Age of sexual maturity is about 2 years. They can have sex till they die. Number of offspring, 1. Gestation to incubation period is about 8 months, and to birth period is 12 months, and they're quite easy to breed. Here's some facts there, we mentioned that. Juveniles look similar to females, except for the developing horns. As they age, develop the darker coat with the white patches. In the wild, warble flies can parasitize Nile Lechwe calves, leading to a relatively high mortality rate as the larvae feed on the tissue and cause infections. Pretty gross. As they live close to bodies of water and spend long periods grazing on aquatic plants, they are key prey species for crocodiles. And Nile Lechwe, also known as Miss Gray's Lechwe after Maria Emma Gray, the wife of John Edward Gray, a keeper at the British Museum, who proposed to classify the species as Cobus mana. Interesting. And they get on well with the buffalo, African buffalo, common ostrich, and reticulated giraffe. So, interesting little guy here. I'm a big fan of these Lechwes. Next, we're going to be moving on to the wild water buffaloes. So, I'm a big fan of these guys. So, let's move over to these big men's. So, wonderful. So, these guys, also known as just the Asian buffalo or the wild Asian buffalo. These guys are large bovid that are typically only found in Southeast Asia, in India, and they've been listed and endangered since 1986, with the wild population being about the same as the population of Lechwe, about 4,000 or 5,000. And it's believed to be, as I mentioned, about 3,400 individuals live in India, and some living, obviously, isolated around the place. So you're thinking, these guys are so endangered, but like there's water buffalo everywhere. Those are domestic water buffalo. So these guys, as you can see, they have this greyish black skin, and they have this moderately coarse hair as well. They can get pretty big as well. Their head to body length is about 240 to 300 centimeters, or 94 to 118 inches, with a shoulder height of about 150 to 190 centimeters, or 59 to 75 inches tall. So pretty big, comparable to things like gar and things like that. Both sexes carry horns that are heavy to the base, and they can spread up to 2 meter horn span, you could say. And they exceed the size as horns of any other living bovids. And they are much larger and heavier than domestic water buffalo. They range between 600 and 1,200 kilograms, or 1,300 to 2,600 pounds, which is makes them pretty much the second largest or bovid alive today, and they're second only to the gaur. So that's the one I mentioned before. Really interesting. So these guys used to live quite more around like India, Nepal, Cambodia, and with unconfirmed populations in Myanmar. Also, they've been extirpated from Laos, Vietnam, Sri Lanka, and Bangladesh, and they're where they typically lived in marshy plains and scrublands and things like that, floodplains, swamps, wet grasslands, places like that. But the population today is heavily restricted to areas in India, with about 3,300, 3,500 wild water buffalo living in Assam and northeastern India, which is kind of some issues there. Obviously, because they're so endangered, they're quite restricted in their range today. There's Thailand, there's believed to be small populations. The only population in Nepal has grown from 63 individuals as well. They've been moved around for different conservation projects. Most of the places other than India, there's very small populations of these buffaloes. So in terms of their ecology and behavior, they're both diurnal and nocturnal, and adults, females will stay with the young from stable clans, and as many as 30 individuals, and they have home ranges up to 1,000 hectares, or 3.86 square miles, for areas where they rest and wallow and things like that. So the clans are led by old cows, so they're very matriarchal, even when bulls accompany them, and the several clans will form like 30 to 500 animals when they gather to these resting areas. And adult males will have bachelor groups of about 10 individuals, with older males often being solitary. And they are seasonal breeders, that means they'll usually breed between October and November. However, some populations, where they can breed year-round. And while we'll do that, we'll talk about these cute little calves. So, the gestation period is about 10 to 11 months, with an interbirth period of every 1 year. And they typically give birth to a single offspring, though twins as possible. And they take about 18 months to mature for males and 3 years for females, with the maximum lifespan in the wild is about 25 years. And these guys are typically grazers, so they feed a lot on those kind of grasses and sedges and things like that, as well as shrubs as well. They'll eat rice and sugarcane and stuff. And they typically prey for animals such as tigers and mugger crocodiles, but also Asian black bears will feed on their young. But yeah, the main threats to these guys include hybridization with domestic and feral water buffalo, hunting, habitat loss, especially in their floodplains, degradation of wetlands as well as another big thing for these guys, diseases and parasites that can be spread from domestic livestock, and inter-Pacific competition with domestic livestock. So that can be issues for these guys. But yeah, really, really wonderful species here. I'm really glad they actually went with the wild one, because it's an endangered species, and it's cool to talk about endangered species. It really looks beautiful, if I do say so myself. Big fan. So yeah, now we're going to move on to... Oh wait, no, we've got to have a look at the Zoopedia. I keep forgetting. So the wild population's about the same, 3,400 of these guys. They're really restricted. As you can see, they're very small populations. Most of them live in India, but some of them, there's some small populations living in Cambodia, places like that. Species data, they can live in herds of 3 to 30, as I mentioned. The matriarchal female clans age dominance, males by age and strength. Polygamous, they're confident and guess kind into their habitat. Males about 1.7 centimeters tall at the shoulder, with females being 1.3. Life expectancy of about 25 years, males weighing about 900 kilograms, females 700. So their age of sexual maturity about 3 years of age. Age of sexual sterility is about 20 years old. They have 1 baby per mating event. Gestation period is about 10 months, and interbirth period is about 24 months, and they're easier to reproduce. Let's look at them facts. Mentioned that bovid one. They tend to be found grazing at the morning and evening, and can be active both during the day and night. As I mentioned, they're susceptible to diseases and parasites that are passed to them from domestic cattle and other livestock. I mentioned that. The vast majority of the remaining population of wild water buffaloes live in protected areas in Indian national parks. And the horns are up to 2 meters wide, as the largest of all living bovids. I mentioned that. And they like to hang out with the Malayan tapir and the Indian rhino. So that's also pretty cool. Wonderful men's there. So now we're going to be moving on to some other cool guys here. So we're going to move on to the birds. So we've got the red-crowned crane. So really awesome guy here. I love these red-crowned cranes. So let's have a look at you. How wonderful. I'm so glad that we've got some more birds. I'm a big fan of birds. So these guys are also known as the Japanese crane. They're a very large East Asian crane. They're actually one of the largest cranes. And they've kind of become a symbol of luck and longevity in their range. So in terms of adults, as you can see, they've got this like light and dark colors. They've got a patch of black on their back and also the neck, but they also have this red part on the top of their head, so that's where they get the name the red-crowned crane. And they're actually among the largest and heaviest of the cranes. They typically get between 150 to 158 centimeters, or 4'5" to 4'2" inches tall, and about 101 to 150 centimeters, or 3'4" to 4'11" in length. And they have a large wingspan of about 220 to 250 centimeters, or 7 foot to 8 foot wingspan, with typical body weights being between 4 to 10 kilograms, or 11 to 23 pounds. And on average, they are the heaviest crane, but there are some wattled and saurus cranes that can get taller. But that's generally how big they're largest. Look at these wonderful guys here. Let's have a look at the one that's not swimming around. Big, wonderful mans. So their range and habitat is there. In spring and summer, there's a migratory population that lives in Siberia, northeastern China, and occasionally northeastern Mongolia, where they breed around the border of China and Russia, where they lay about 2 eggs with only one surviving. And there's also a population in China that is kind of resident population, but these guys will migrate from China to Russia down to the Korean Peninsula in fall, and then they spend the east central China in winter, with also migrants being seen in Taiwan as well, where they live in rice paddies, tidal flats, mud flats, where they feed on things like aquatic invertebrates and stuff like that. And they have a highly omnivorous diet, so they'll feed on rice, carrots, acorns. They'll also eat carp and goldfish, amphibians, dragonfly, shrimp, small mammals. Pretty much anything they can get their mouths around, they will eat it. And they tend to be... flock sizes have been affected by the small number of these cranes, but given their larger carnivorous diet, there's some dispersal needed to try and have their good population. So wintering cranes have been observed foraging in small family groups, or even by themselves, although they roost in large groups of about up to 80 cranes. And in early spring, the pairs will spend more time together, with non-breeding birds or juveniles dispersing separately. Even when not nesting, they tend to be aggressive towards other cranes, and they keep a minimum distance about 2 to 3 meters to keep away from each other and not violate each other's boundaries. So yeah, really, really wonderful. Look at these wonderful guys here. Next, we're going to talk about the babies. Let's have a look at these wonderful baby. Very, very awesome. So they're territorial during the breeding season, with nesting territories being between 1 and 7 kilometers, or about 0.39 to 2.7 miles, and often in the same year after year, so often in the same place. They typically will nest in like flat terrain with wetland habitat. Nest sites will often be selected by females and built by both sexes in a small clearing, and either on wet ground or shallow water that's no more than 20 to 50 centimeters deep. And sometimes they're built over frozen surface of water. Also, frigid temperatures may persist into the nesting season, with nest building taking about a week. So the majority of the nests contain 2 eggs, although 1 to 3 have been recorded. Both sexes will incubate the eggs for about 30 days, and the young will start to follow their parents when they hatch after that 30 days. And they will follow their parents into the marshes at about 3 months of age, with new hatchlings weighing about 150 grams. And by the time they reach about 2 weeks old, they are able to get this down they have here. They get rid of most of it. And in early fall, after 95 days of hatching, the young are fledged and they're able to fly and migrate with their parents. Although they can fly well, the crane's young will remain with their parents for about 9 months of their life. And young cranes will actually maintain a higher pitched voice that allows them to distinguish as other mature birds. And they're actually quite long-lived. An adult lifespan is estimated to be 30 to 40 years, with some living up to 75 in captivity, and that makes them one of the longest-lived bird species. So in terms of their status, the population in Korea and China and Mongolia, the migratory population, is quite small. I believe the estimated population is about 1,830 all up in the wild, which includes about 950 in the resident Japanese population and about 400 500 in the winter population, while the remaining 1,000 to 1,050 will winter in Korea, and that's why they get their endangered status. There's less than a little bit over 1,000 of them. And they're kind of considered a status symbol in China. In Taoism, they're kind of a symbol of immortality and longevity, which is fitting because they're quite long-lived birds. And also they've said to live for 1,000 years, and they've been used in Japan. There's things like that. There's also a symbol for like Japan Airlines, which is really cool because endangered species as your logo is also awesome. So we'll have a look at the Zoopedia for these guys. So the red-crowned crane, the estimated population is about 2,300. One of the largest crane species. Yep, we talked about that. So you can see this is the population that lives in eastern China, the migratory population, and this is the sedentary population. Group size is 4 to 80, up to 75 males and females. Batch of groups 4 to 80. Dominance, none. The mated pairs may defend territories. The mating system is monogamous. Neutral and guests can enter the habitat. 1.54 meters tall for both male and female. Life expectancy about 40 years. In weight about 7 kilos on average, so they can get up to 10. Age of sexual maturity is 4 years old. They can have sex till they die. Number of offspring is 1. Gestation and incubation is 1 month. Interbirth period is about 12 months, and they're difficult to breed in captivity. So little facts about there. I've mentioned about the culture and stuff. These mating dances called duets of the red-crowned crane are very complex and often involve 2 cranes mimicking each other. Although their meaning is not yet fully understood, the dancing of the cranes is generally thought to express excitement. And they're also highly territorial, as I mentioned. The heaviest crane with record weights being up to 15 kilograms. I've already mentioned that. And they can live with the Japanese macaque. That's pretty interesting. I'm a big fan of how these little guys came out. They're very, very cute. They're very wonderful birds. So next, we have got the Asian small-clawed otter. So we're almost on the home stretch here. Really, really cute little guys here. Look at these little mens. So these are also known as the Oriental small-clawed otter, or just the small-clawed otter. These are otter species that are native to South and Southeast Asia, with these short little claws here. And instead of having kind of claws, they have these little webbed feet, which looks really, really cute, if I do say so myself. And they live in freshwater riverine habitats and mangroves and stuff, and feed on all sorts of little invertebrates and things like that. And they live in groups of up to 12 individuals. And so in terms of characteristics here, you can see they've got this brown fur with white around their face and underbelly. And on the sides and necks is brown as well. In terms of their size, they're the smallest otter species in Asia. They have a head to body length of about 470 to 610 millimeters, or 18 to 24 inches, with a 260, 350, or 10 to 13 inch tail. They're also, the hind limbs are about 97 to 102 millimeters, or 3.8 to 4 inches long, with a scale that ranges from 3.3 to 3.7 inches, or 84 to 94 centimeters. And in adult captive otters range between 2.5 or 2.7 to 3.5 kilograms, so 6 to 7.7 pounds. These guys, their native habitat composes of most of parts of India and Southeast Asia. That includes Sumatra, Palawan, Java, and Borneo. They live in freshwater habitats such as swamps, rivers, estuaries, lots of those kind of places. And they even live in high elevations in West Java, where they live in like rice fields as well, and things like that. And there was actually in the 1980s, there was a small population that was escaped from captivity in England and established a population. So these guys apparently did do well in England, so that's interesting. So these guys are typically active after dark, so they're nocturnal. They live in groups of up to 15 individuals, and when swimming on the surface, they will row with their forelimbs and paddle with their hind limbs, which is pretty cute, as you can see here. Observations of wild otters reveal that they smear their latrine and stuff, and they spratum and stuff like that, and they use their hind feet as well. With large groups, they smear more of these groups of 3 to 4 animals. The frequency of these latrine and smeared sites are often just depend on the localities. It shows preferences sometimes, and they're kind of used to mark territory, things like that. And in terms of their diet, they're pretty generous. They feed on crabs, mud skippers, and trigusta fish. They've eaten crabs that are pretty big, up to like 44 centimeters or 17 inches in the carapace. And captive otters tend to leave shellfish in the sun, which the heat causing them to open up. And they will consume the crustaceans without having to eat the shell, so that's really cool. And let's take a look at the little baby. Look at the cute little baby there. Is that a baby? No, it's an adult. I want to see the baby. Where's the baby? There's the baby. Look at this cute little mans. Look at him. Adorable. So while we're talking about these little mans, these are reproduction. Information about these mating and breeding behavior has been studied in captive environment, with captive pairs being monogamous. So the estrus cycle will last about 28 to 30 days, with estrus being between 1 and 13 days. Usually mating will take place in the water, with gestation lasting between 62 and 86 days, with interbirth being a period at least 8 months. After 2 weeks after poutration, or kind of when they get up and stuff like that, they will begin engage in building a nest. They will collect grass and make bedding material and stuff like that, and between 1 to 7 pups are born in a litter. And pups are usually born with their eyes closed and open up the 5th week. Newborn pups are between 45 and 62 kilograms, or 1.61 or 2.20 ounces, and they reach weights between 410 to 908 grams at about 60 days old. They start to become exploring in the dens, outside the den, at about 10 weeks old, and about 3 months old, they enter and paddle shallow water under the guidance of their mother, and they become fully independent about 4 to 5 months old. So in terms of their issues, there's lots of issues in terms of their habitat because of habitat degradation and destruction of habitat, also poaching for its fur. Another issue is that they've been collected for the pet trade. And it's even between 2016 and 2017, it seemed that there was almost like 1,000 otters offered for sale as pets, which is very not good. And they shouldn't be doing that. And also, there, as I mentioned, deforestation, conversion of their habitat for palm oil and tea, things like that. And also, water pollution by pesticides is another big issue for these guys. So they are listed as CITES 1, so you can't, CITES 2, so they're protected in pretty much all their range. And they have protection against international trade as well. So yeah, look at these cute little guys. I am a big fan. So let's have a look at their Zoopedia. Wild population is about 5,000. So they're considered vulnerable. They live in rivers in Southeast Asia, things like that. Small guys. You can see most of their range here. India, Borneo, Java, Myanmar. Places like that. Group is up to 2 to 16. So up to 50 males, 50 females. Group size for males, 2 to 16, females 2 to 6. The dominant mating pair within family group, they're monogamous, they're neutral to humans, and guests come into the habitat, so that's cute. Size 52 centimeters long or so, life expectancy 14 years, and a weight 4 kilograms. Age of sexual maturity is about 2 years old. They can have sex till they die. Offspring's typically 1 to 3. Gestation incubation period's about 2 months. Interbirth period's 12 months, and average in between. So they're monogamous mate for life. They can close their ears and nostrils while swimming, and despite living in groups, they generally hunt for themselves. They are extremely dexterous in comparison to other otter species due to their short claws and incomplete webbing between their toes. Grooming is also very important for these otters as they trap air between the hair follicles that keeps them insulated and dry while swimming. And who they like to live with, they like the tapir, the proboscis monkey, the binturong, the orangutan, and the rhinoceros. So that's very, very cool. Wonderful little guys here. So next up, we are second to last animal. We have got the platypus. So how can you not love a good platypus? These guys are often referred to as the ductile platypus, and it's actually our first monotreme in Planet Zoo, so really awesome. So these guys live in eastern Australia, that includes Tasmania, and the only living member of the group Ornithorhynchidae, so that basically means bird nose, which is pretty cool. Together with the other 4 species of Echidna, these guys are one of the few living monotremes. That means they lay eggs, so we'll talk about that. They're very, very interesting guys. I'm a big fan. So you can see their kind of sizes here. Their weight generally gets about 0.7 to 2.4 kilograms, or 1 to 5 pounds, with males generally being larger than the females. Males will average about 50 centimeters in length, with females being on average 43 centimeters, so that's 20 to 17 inches. And the platypus, they have an average body temperature about 32 degrees, or about 90 degrees Fahrenheit, which is less than your normal, typical, like, placental mammal. And it seems that these guys has kind of had that as an adaptation to harsh environments, and as part of the small number of surviving monotreme species, rather than a historic characteristic of monotremes. So it's very possible that all the monotremes may have had higher metabolisms. So these guys, they're really weird, that when they were first discovered, they thought it was an animal stitched together. They have this long beak that is able to detect, like, it's very similar to, like, sharks, where they're able to detect, like, the electricity produced by animals' nervous systems and things like that, and able to detect movements in the water as well, so that it allows them to feel where their food is, especially in, like, muck and stuff, especially with their eyes closed. They have these big front things, or paddles, where they move around like that as well. Males are actually venomous as well. They have a bony spur on their back leg, and they have this long platypus-like tail, which is not platypus, like a beaver-like tail. So males, as I mentioned, they have a spur where they can deliver venom, and it's actually been known to kill dogs, and it can be quite painful to people, and it suggests that it may be an ancient characteristics of mammals at the time, so it's not exclusive to other monotremes and platypus. And they have electrolocation, which are the only mammals to have this, so they can able to sense electric fields by muscular contractions. See, I can't speak today. Where they're able to use that and detect, so very similar to something like a shark would do, which is awesome. And they actually have bioluminescence as well. That means they glow colors under fluorescent light. They're typically glow bluish green, stuff like that. In terms of their diet and habitat and ecology, these guys are semi-aquatic. As you can see, they live in small streams and rivers across Tasmania and the Australian Alps, up to coastal Queensland and as much far as north as Cape York. So they've been breeding programs, things like that, to try and set up populations as well. There's a population on Kangaroo Island that was introduced as well. And they're no longer found in parts of the Murray-Darling River because of the declining water quality. That's another conservation thing. In terms of captivity, they can live up to 17 years, while wild specimens have lived up to 11 years. And mortality rates for adults in the wild actually appears to be pretty low. And natural predators include snakes, water rats, goannas, hawks, eagles, crocodiles as well. And the introduction of red foxes has actually not been good to them, and has had some impact on their numbers. They're considered nocturnal or crepuscular, so that means they either come out at night or during early morning and night, and it's kind of afternoon. And they tend to live in rivers and riparian areas where there's lots of food, and they actually dig these burrows as well. As you kind of see here, there should be a little burrow there. Really, really cute. Dives for these guys typically last about 30 seconds, but they can last longer, up to 40 seconds, and they usually come up after that. They have these short burrows, and as their diet, they'll eat things like annelid worms, larvae, crustacean or yabbies, or freshwater crayfish, things like that. They use to sift out through the water, the riverbed, and things like that. So that's really, really cool. So in terms of reproduction, they exhibit a single breeding season, which typically occurs between June and August. And we'll come to the baby platypus while we talk about them. Look at these cute little fellows. Look at them. I'm a big fan of how cute these little guys are. I love them. I like love them. Very, very cute. So outside the mating season, they typically do their own thing. But their normal breeding season is about June to October, where they suggest they have a polygamous mating system. And females are likely to be sexually mature at their second years of age, with breeding confirmed to still take place up to they're 9 years old. So outside the mating season, they live in these burrows. And after mating, the female will construct a larger burrow, and it will plug it up as well and kind of try and use it as a long-term burrow for her babies. These guys, they have a pair of ovaries, but only the left one is functional, and it's believed to be an evolutionary link, as their genes is kind of between the XY sex determination chromosomes in mammals, and in birds and reptiles it's ZW, so it seems to be kind of like a transitioning phase of that, so that's very interesting. So they typically lay up to 1 to 3 small little leathery eggs, similar to those of reptiles, that are about 11 millimeters in diameter, and they're slightly rounder than bird eggs, and they develop in utero for about 28 days and only 10 days in external incubation. So in contrast, chicken spends 1 day in its tract and 21 days, so they spend a lot of their time inside their mother, and then they lay them for like the last few days of external incubation. So the incubation period is typically done in 3 phases, where the embryo has no functional organs and relies on the egg sac, and then it's absorbed, and then once the second phase, the digits developed, and then the egg tooth appears in their final stage, allows them to break out. There's no official term for baby platypuses, but they tend to use platypup. It's very cute because I love the term platypup. It's very, very cute. And they're born hairless, blind, and vulnerable. And though they do not have like teats or like a cow or breasts like a human would, they typically release milk through pores in their skin on the abdomen, where the babies will come up and kind of drink from there. So they're very interesting. And in terms of their conservation status, they've been doing pretty well until like humans came, and their historical abundance is unknown, but they've been hunted extensively for their fur, and there's been lots of issues such as habitat destruction, because people have been destroying their habitat for dams. Irrigation and pollution has been another big issue. Disease, as there's few diseases in the wild that can affect them, but like funguses and things like that have been a big issue for these guys. Are they all? No, they're not all. Let's see, look here. There's a male. I want to see if the male has a spurs. I doubt it. But yeah, really, really awesome. I'm a big fan. But they are really actually housed a lot in wildlife sanctuaries, and they're commonish in captivity in Australia. So they are doing okay. I believe they are considered vulnerable. Not endangered, but near threatened. So doing a little bit better, but having such a wide range that helps. But there are issues such as pollution, hunting, things like that. That's been big issues. Also invasive species such as foxes has hurt their numbers. But yeah, really, really wonderful little animals here. So let's have a look at the platypus. The wild population estimated to be between 30,000 and 300,000. Really cool little guys. So found across eastern Australia with Tasmania. Species data 1 to 3. Bachelor size 1. 1 to 2 in females. Males will fight over territory and available females. And promiscuous, and quite confident, and guess can into their habitat. So about size is 51 centimeters long for males and 46 for females. 13 to 15 years life expectancy for males and females, and 1.65 to 1.3 kilograms in size. Age of sexual maturity is about 2 years old, as I mentioned before. Age of sexual sterility is about 13. Number of offspring typically 1 to 3, with an incubation period of about a month, and to birth period about 12 months, and they're difficult to reproduce in captivity. So let's have a look. We mentioned that. Platypus and other monotremes are among the only mammals to lose electrolocation. That's different from echolocation. They use electrolocation, so they use electricity to kind of detect their prey in the water with their bills. The platypus was first discovered, they were sent for examination. It was thought to be a hoax because it looked like many animals sewn together. And I don't blame you for thinking that, because it's got the duck of a bill of a duck, and it's got the body of like an otter and the tail of a beaver. It's very interesting. And as a member of the order Monotrines, the only mammal species that lays eggs instead of giving live birth. They produce, yeah, we mentioned that, and they have biofluorescent blue-green skin under ultraviolet light, which is hypothesized that this adaptation might actually reduce their visibility to predators, so that's interesting. And they don't benefit from sharing their habitat with anyone, which kind of sucks. Really, really cute little guys. So, last and most definitely not least, we have got kind of the headliner of this pack. We have got the capybara. And how can you not love these capybaras? Really awesome how these guys came out. So these guys, also known as the greater capybara, the Hybricharas, I believe that. These are a giant cavy rodent from South America, and they are the largest living rodent. The only other extant member of this group is the Lasso Capybara, and they're closely related to animals such as guinea pigs and rock cavies. So your little guinea pig that you probably have at home or see at the pet shop, their closest living relatives, or one of their close relatives, is these wonderful capybaras. So these guys kind of get pretty big. These guys get about 106 to 134 centimeters, or 3.48 to 4.4 feet long, and they stand about 50 to 62 centimeters, or 24 to 24 inches tall at the withers, and they weigh between 35 and 66 kilograms, or 77 to 146 pounds, so they're quite big. I believe the largest one was about 91 kilograms, or 201 pounds for a wild female in Brazil, and 73 for a male in Uruguay. So they can get a bit bigger than that, but obviously extreme side of that. So these guys are kind of like rodent hippos. They're semi-aquatic mammals, and they're found pretty much through all the countries in South America except Chile. They typically live in dense forests around near bodies of water, such as rivers, lakes, ponds, things like that, as well as tropical rainforests and rivers and things like that, also flooded savannas. And they're quite superb swimmers and can hold their breath for up to 5 minutes at a time. And they actually have flourished a lot on cattle ranches as well, and they typically live in home ranges up to 10 hectares, or 25 acres, and they live in high densities. So many escapees have actually been found in similar water habitats across the world, particularly Florida, though there actually is believed to be... this occurs in areas where there are extinct populations of capybaras or capybara species in America as well, so they think it's kind of like a rewilding thing. But yeah, I think these guys are just so cool. Let's have a look at one swimming, because they are quite cool swimmers. Look at these guys go. Swimming capybaras. I love that they swim. And I love that they actually swim like that. These guys are herbivores, so they graze mainly on grasses and aquatic plants, as well as eating fruit and tree bark. They are very selective feeders, so they feed on the leaves of one species and disregard other species surrounding it sometimes. They will eat a greater variety due to dry season, as there's full plants available, and they eat the grass during the wet season, and as they get to the dry season, they will switch to some more abundant reeds, things like that. Plants that capybaras eat during the summer lose their nutritional value in the winter, so they're not consumed at this time. And they, like other rodents, they have these large teeth that are continuously growing, so that allows them to really eat things like that and really digest that. And like their relatives, the guinea pigs, they actually do not have the ability to synthesize vitamin C. So they actually can get scurvy if they're not supplemented with vitamin C. And they have a lifespan of about 8 to 10 years, but they typically live to less than 4 years in the wild due to having so many predators. So that includes things like jaguars, pumas, ocelots, caimans, and eagles. And also they are the preferred prey of the green anaconda. So these guys are very, very social animals. They live in large groups. They're known to be gregarious, although they sometimes live solitary. They typically live in groups of about 10 to 20 individuals, or in pairs, with 2 to 4 adult males, 4 to 7 adult females, and juveniles. And they have been even consistent of groups of like 50 to 100 individuals during the dry season, where the animals will gather and abound water, things like that, where they'll establish social bonds, things like that. And they also can make dog-like barks when threatened, or when the females are herding young, so it kind of gives like a bark. They also have 2 types of scent glands. They have the Murillo, which is this large one on the snout, which is kind of hidden. You probably see it as it comes out of the water. The Murillo there, and the anal gland as well. Both sexes have these glands, but the males have much larger Murillos on their noses here, so the one that we saw before with the big gland there was a male. And these guys are also lined with detachable hairs, which they use to kind of communicate with each other. So they make sense and kind of use that to communicate, especially when females are in estrus, things like that. They will use those kind of markings and stuff like that. And we'll have a look at these cute babies while we talk about reproduction, as we always do. So when in estrus, the female will kind of suggest subtly and with her smells and kind of get the males will come and try and shoot their shot, pretty much. Capybaras mate only in water, and the females do not want to mate. She will either submerge or leave the water. With dominant males being highly protective of the females, so you can't prevent some subordinate males from breeding with the females. But the larger the group, the larger it's harder for the males to watch. So the dominant males will secure significantly more matings than subordinate males, but some subordinate males are responsible for more matings than each dominant male. And they actually have a longer, their sperm has a longer lifespan than a lot of other rodents, which is pretty cool. And in terms of gestation, their gestation lasts about 130 to 150 days, and they produce a litter of 4 young on average, but may produce up to between 1 to 8 in a litter. So birth is typically on land, and females will join the group within a few hours of giving birth to these cute little babies here. And within a week, the young will be eating grasses, but they will continue to suckle from their mother, even from any female in their group as well, until they're fully weaned at about 16 weeks old. And the young will also form a group within the main group, and alloparenting is observed in the species, so that means other animals in the group will kind of take care of the babies of other members, which is a pretty cool thing, and it's a good thing for survival. And in terms of activities, they're quite agile on land, but they're equally as home in the water, and as we mentioned, they're kind of very excellent swimmers. And they can remain completely submerged for up to 5 minutes, which they use to evade predators. They can also sleep in the water by keeping their noses out of the water, and as the temperature increases during the day, they wallow in the water and graze in the late afternoon and early evening. And they often spend a lot of their time wallowing in the mud as well, and they rest after midnight so they can continue to graze before dawn, so that's also really cool. So these guys are a threatened species because they're quite commonly hunted for their meat and pelts, but they breed so fast and they're farmed as well, they're doing okay. And they've adapted well to urbanization and can be found in many zoos and parks around the world and live up to 10 years in captivity. They're also docile, and humans can pet and play with them and things like that. But physical contact is normally discouraged since they can be vectors for disease. They've been farmed for meat and skins in South America, and their meat is considered unsuitable to eat in some areas. In other areas, it's an important source of protein. It just depends on the area. Although it's illegal to have some in some states, you can keep them as a pet. And yeah, just really, really wonderful animals here. So let's see if we can find another male. Where's our males on? Is anyone swimming in the water there? I don't think so. See, the males are the one with the largest morello there. I don't think I can see it. There it is. So yeah, have a look at the Zoopedia. So you can see wild population unknown, quite common. Quite a huge range. The Lasso Capybara tends to live more in Central America. 4 to 20, so 9 males up to 19 females. 4 to 20 males and things like that. They have a dominance hierarchy, and they're promiscuous. They're confident with humans, and guests get into their habitat, so that's awesome. 56 centimeters tall at the shoulder and can live up to 10 years. Females are slightly larger at 61 kilograms, males about 50. Not sure if that's correct, but I'll just take the game's word for it. The age of sexual maturity is about 1.5 years old, and they have sex till they die. The number of offspring is about 2 to 6, with a gestation to incubation period about 5 months, and to birth period about 12 months, and they're very easy to breed in captivity. So let's look at the facts. The name capybara is evolved from the old Tupi word capiara, which means grass eater, while the Spanish and Portuguese influence in the early 17th century. They're the largest living rodent, we mentioned that. They can run up to speeds of 35 kilometers an hour. That's also pretty interesting. And look who they get on with. Llamas, tortoises, giant anteaters, Bard's tapir, and white-faced monkey. Capuchin, I mean. It's a really, really wonderful pack. I'm a big fan of all the wonderful animals. I like that we got animals from all across the world. I'm a big fan of those kind of packs. Give us a little bit more diversity of all the places around the world, and give us some cool animals. Really, really wonderful. So, yeah. A bit of a long one, but it's cool that we get to cover all these animals. So, yeah. I think it's about time to end the video, and yeah, I really, really hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you guys like and subscribe. Always remember to hit the little bell icon at the bottom there to get notified when I learn anything. So yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video. Hope you guys like and subscribe, and bye-bye.